Hello, welcome back to All for United WFC. Well, that's been a mental 48, 24 hours, isn't it? There's so much news dropping at the moment around Man United women. There's just transfer links, players potentially leaving, players potentially staying, players potentially coming in, all ahead of our final game of the season. Believe it or not, we do actually play this weekend our final game of the season. That's kind of been forgotten along the week. Obviously, hello to everyone in the comments. Get your thoughts and any questions and things like that. We're going to try and wrap this up in 50 minutes or so. Obviously, because United men's side kicking off at 8 o'clock, so we will try and get that done before then. I'm not going to waste any more time with the intro. I'm going to come to yourself first, Matt. The news that came out it was kind of the other night, wasn't it? And then confirmed yesterday by a very reliable Maria in Spain that Ona has verbally agreed, I think it's the correct terminology, a deal with Barcelona. And obviously that's the club that we all expected to go to if she was going to leave. Just your initial thoughts off the back of seeing that yesterday, because not going to lie, I was a little bit surprised to see it before the end of the season.
Yeah, I think your tweet the other day summed it up perfectly. The one where you said, it would have been nice had the club said something so we could have sort of give her a send-off at LSV. But I think there's been rumours, obviously, last summer as well. She stayed this season, arguably being probably our best player or player of the season for most people. And yeah, I suppose somebody of that quality, it's difficult to replace. There's a lot of people talking about Jade Riviere slotting in. Bearing in mind she's had very limited minutes already, can she slot in with a pre-season behind her? Who knows? But I think, yes, it's a big loss. Obviously, I know you want to get more into sort of what happened and who's at fault later on, but I think just initially it's not great from United. I've seen a lot of people blame the manager as if he sits around the table discussing things, which I can 100% say he doesn't. But yeah, not a good start to next season, really.
No, I mean, Graham, for yourself, before we dive into specifics, I can never say that word properly. Before we dive into that and talk about what we know, some things that's out there in the public and things like that, what was your kind of initial thoughts seeing it? So we've spoken a lot. You were on this channel, I think, in late December talking about it, and you said if you had to put a bet on it, you said that she would probably go in the summer. But what's your kind of, I guess, initial reaction to it before we dive into the more specific stuff?
At the risk of being scolded by Manchester United fans, not that surprised. But I'm maybe coming from a different angle. And obviously there's a lot of caveats to what I'm about to say, but on the face of it, she's a Barcelona fan. She came to their academy. She's Spanish. They're the biggest club in Europe. They've got a chance to win in the Champions League every single year. They're in the Champions League final every year. They win the league comfortably, almost unbeaten every season. And I mean, so I'm a Sunderland fan, I think, as people know. If Sunderland said to me that I was good enough to be there, I don't know, written journalist or whatever, and I'm going to pay you more money than, where I work at the moment is, I'd probably go based on just the heart over the money side of it. I think it'll probably increase their pay packet. They're obviously a much bigger club than Sunderland. I don't mind saying that. It is truth. Barcelona might be a little bit bigger than Sunderland, but I think they're the biggest club in Europe. They've got a chance of winning everything, whereas Manchester United is still very much a project. And obviously, that I think you're tugging at the heartstrings there, aren't you, with the fact that she is a Barcelona fan. I personally don't see how you could have turned that down. I think the only way you could have potentially made her stay is throwing lots of money at her, which I don't know if Manchester United have done or if they haven't. I would assume they've tried. Every time I asked Mark Skinner about the situation, I think I asked him in April, and he said when he looked in it on his eyes, he understood how happy she was at Manchester United. And I don't think she's unhappy, but I don't think I think it's really hard to turn down Barcelona. Really, really hard. And I know people have said Lucy Bronze is there. I think Lucy Bronze is a fabulous right back, world class, but I think Ona is as well, and she's about 7 years younger and available on a free transfer. I think there's probably only Barcelona that could have prized her away, but unfortunately for Man United fans, it's the dream club at the dream time, at the dream age. It's a pain. It's horrible to hear because every fan thinks their club is the biggest club, but I just think Barcelona offer more trophies right now. They offer probably a chance for her to play for the club that she's loved since she was a kid. It's just Yeah, I mean, that's one thing I would say. Barcelona have been a little bit greedy. They don't necessarily need another right back, but progress. You know, you want to always have progression. Like, I don't think Barcelona want to sit there and be like, oh, well, we've got Lucy Bronze, that'll be all right for the next 3 years. They want the next world class right back, and that's Ona.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to disagree with what you're saying. I think I'll put on my tweet, a lot of United fans knew this was coming. However, there is going to be a but to this. I see, Marcus, you're saying that nobody wants to put any blame on Polly or John Murto. I said that we're going to get to that. Sporty's raised a point. The only one to blame the owners if a lowballing contract has gone in, but if Honor is determined to go home, there's nothing we can do about it. Right, that kind of leads me on to my kind of question. And this is where I said to the guys before we went live, it's going to be interesting to see what we say and what we don't say here off the back of what we know and what we don't know. So, Matt, I'll come to you first. I guess my question is, could United have done more? Just from an opinion basis and from a factual basis. Do you think United could have done more? Or do you think this was, as Graham said, it's so hard to turn down that, she would have gone anyway?
I think the club could have done more for me. Listen, I'm going to answer and say yes to both questions, I think for me, could they have done more? Yes. Should they have done more? Yes. Have they done enough? Not for me. I don't know how much you want to go into it, but from what I'd heard with sort of links with her agent, the United offer wasn't good enough. It was I suppose I'd use the word insult. I think if you're one of the top players at the club, your pay should reflect that. And I think that's the same for any normal person. I think, we're all, working in jobs. I think if you were to be offered a deal and somebody offered you a slight pay rise and your performance over the past 2-3 years has been, pretty outstanding, then you're in a difficult situation, aren't you? I think, I'd heard that negotiations have been going on since October with Polly Bancroft, kind of not really progressed. And I don't think, like has been mentioned, I don't think Ona's pushed for the move, but I think the fact that, as mentioned, she is from Spain, she started off in the Barca Youth Academy, you can see reasons why she would go. And just think if you don't feel valued at the club, and that's not to say she doesn't, but from my sort of understanding, the club don't seem to value her, then in a way, why would you stay? And that's painful to say. But I just think, perfect comment there. Your favourite club comes, you're going to answer the call. We've seen players leave in the past. Greenwood left because she wanted to win the Champions League. And yes, it rattled everybody. But she went to Lyon and she won, I think she won a treble, something like that. So, it's happened with other players as well. And it is disappointing. I think my anger's directed at the club. Like I said, I've seen a lot of people direct it at, Skinner and people like that. But if the club aren't putting the suitable offer on the table, why would you be motivated to stay for another 2 or 3 years when you can go back to your home country, win trophies and ultimately, be valued more as a player?
I think that's what's tough for me, hearing what I have and knowing what I do, I guess. It's like, I understand the point, what the comment I've just brought up at the end of the day, I get that. However, I do think there was room for more of an offer that was more suited to her. We're going to move on to kind of Russo in just a little bit. However, I do think in Ona's case in particular, I think that there's been some mismanagement is probably the wrong word, but I think there's the negotiations I don't think has gone in the right direction from United side. I don't put any blame on it. I don't put any blame on Skinner also, as you just said there.
Yeah.
If people, as you said, if people think that Mark is sat around the table negotiating with these players, it doesn't happen. Obviously, he would like to keep all of his players that he, Ona's played pretty much every minute this season. He wants her to stay. However, it's on the people above him. And I think you only have to look at what Mark has said in public press conferences and interviews after games, talking about investment, talking about the likes of what Chelsea do and so on. I think it's very obvious. I think he probably knew what was coming, but also he's not going to come out and call out the Glazers because ultimately he will lose his job, if you start calling out your bosses and so on. However, I think he's been very telling in interviews. And Graham, that kind of leads me on to what I was going to ask you. Have you noticed a change in any of Mark's answers? Because like I said, I've seen a lot of anger, I guess, directed towards Mark. However, like I've just said, in his interviews to me, he has been mentioning investment a lot more. And he's been, even when he's not been asked the question, he's been mentioning it and trying to, I don't know, almost like indirectly, I don't know what the word is here, indirectly call out, I guess, the people above to put more money in and maybe to put some more backing behind this team. Have you noticed that, or do you, or anything else you want to add on the back of what Matt said as well?
No, I kind of agree with that. I think, conversations maybe around Christmas time, January, February was all about essentially what he still is kind of steadfast in. He's there to manage the team, and his job is to get the best out of them. And he thinks they've made a massive amount of progression. It's kind of hard to disagree with that. Like, it's the best season Manchester United have had. They're still going into the final game of the season where they could win the title. If they don't, they finish second. That's Champions League football. That's not hassling the top three. That's actually breaking it and then ending up further than top three, your top two. Got to a cup final as well. And I think he'll see his job as that. Is it frustrating when you're trying to build a team, but it's not really up to you who signs contracts and who doesn't? Yeah, probably. Do I think, and I agree with Matt, I don't think he does sit around the table. I think that's essentially Polly's job from what it seems. Or somebody at the club who has the purse strings. I think Mark, though, sort of just before the FA Cup final, just after the FA Cup final, has talked about actually winning things, and this team will win things, but it's come almost with the caveat, with answers to some of these other questions, that investment's required. But this morning, really bizarrely, and obviously I don't mind taking the hit for this, people didn't ask about Ona this morning in the press conference, which I've got to be honest, I was kind of half expecting it, and people didn't. So you didn't get much information on investment for next season in terms of, if he's going to lose players like that, do they need to invest even more? But it does seem that a lot of his answers are saying how well the team have done. Like, look how far we've progressed. Look what we've done with what we've invested so far. If we can invest, we can be the Manchester United that are, maybe with the 90s men's team. We could dominate a little bit more. I think when any manager mentions the word investment, it's not by accident. Like, I also feel like when you ask Jonas Ederval, are you interested in this player? And he says, no comment. That means probably going to sign. So I feel like things like the words investment and progress, for me, kind of spells out that he wants it. He knows that it's required. I think it's interesting the comments he's made on Ona for a long, long time. All of them have been on the face of it positive. I can see when I look at her, she wants to be at Manchester United. I can see she loves the club. There's a lot of love from the club to her. But none of them said, yeah, we're discussing it and we're quite close. The club are working hard. It's like, I don't know, the word try, the word trying to me is like a word ready to fail, if that makes sense, psychologically. So I've always felt like the Ona situation would come. I think it was never a case of, in my opinion, whether she would stay or not. I think it was just a case of how much Barca wanted her. I think obviously there's been interest from Bayern Munich. There's been interest from Man City like 6 months ago. I don't think that's going to happen now because obviously they're not getting Champions League football by the looks of it. And there'll be interest in other clubs in Ona. Like, it won't have just been Barcelona. I do think, though, if there has been an offer that's gone in that she's not been 100% happy with, or her agent doesn't think has shown her true value, which for me, Ona's true value is the best player at Manchester United and potentially the best right back in Europe. And she doesn't think that's valued, that other agent doesn't think they valued that. And then Barcelona come going, hello, we'd quite like to sign you, actually. And she goes, Barcelona, damn, should I go back to Manchester United and see if they value me more? And I'm saying that, hypothetically, if that has happened. But I also ultimately think no matter what happens, no matter what you threw at Ona, there's going to be a tug on that heartstring. You could have chucked millions at her and she's still going to go, Barcelona. I think it was inevitable, to be honest, because of where Barcelona are in their, can I even say progression, or can I just say domination? Man United are still a work in progress. And no matter what you do or how much money or investment you shove in, a club that's only been around for 5 years is always going to be in a progression, because as Chelsea fans know this season, you can't just chuck money at stuff and expect it to work. On the same token, just to play devil's advocate, sorry, Connor, you look at, it's not a surprise that Ona is this good. We didn't know this season. It wasn't a sudden sort of overnight in August. We went, that right back from Spain's not too bad. I think people noticed what her talent was long before that. She's been great since she's been at Manchester United. I would have probably, if I was, someone with a purse strings at Manchester United, I'm not. I wish I was, because then I'd have a significantly better pay packet and enough money to pay my mortgage this month. But if I was, I think a year and a half into her stay there, 2 years into her stay there, that's when I would have been sitting on the table. I'm not saying there weren't, but there wasn't many rumours of her being sat down last summer or the January before that and discussing a contract. And I don't think Ona's talent is a surprise. It's not crept up on anyone.
You mentioned, so I am going to stick my neck out on the line here because I've got no relationships to burn with what I'm about to say, but I think you are right, and I think this is where my frustration is, and I've been annoyed most of the afternoon as these two or no, because when you mentioned, talking about Ona maybe should, and someone made the point earlier on why wasn't Ona maybe negotiated earlier on, it's the fact that United are allowing it. I say allowing it to run down as much as it is. Now, don't get me wrong. Like I said, she might have gone anyway. Like you said, it's hard to turn Barca down. However, knowing roughly what could or was offered and to other players in and around her, it's very frustrating knowing that I don't think it was enough. And I think that's what's most frustrating, that United maybe don't see what we have from a quality point of view. And it does seem to be focused more from a marketing point of view rather than a footballing point of view. And I think that's where it's frustrating. And I think fans of the men's side will know this from previous years. Some of the signings that we've made there and some of the contracts we've renewed have purely been a non-footballing decision. I think that's pretty obvious. And I think we're starting to see that a little bit on the women's side as well, with some of the players that we're signing and some of the names that we're being, I guess, linked to and around. It seems very much like that.
I can't be too critical of your board because I'm desperately wanting them to send us Amad Diallo back on loan for next season. So I'm just going to say they're great right now and everything they're doing is perfect. Just send us back Amad and that'd be fab. But on a serious note, you hear the word, I think we all hear the word future-proof an awful lot when it comes to Manchester United. Now, I understand the likes of, Evie Rabjon, there's been links to Emma Watson from Rangers. There's been links to, other younger players, which we'll come on to, I'm sure, during the show. And I understand future-proofing the team, but that also is kind of like future-proofing from your best players getting picked for absolutely nothing. And just to play devil's advocate again, I don't know if you could have turned ahead anyway, but I would have at least tried when you first saw that potential. They didn't sign her for no reason. A year and a half into that stay that she's had with Man United, a year into that stay with Manchester United, I'd be like, I know you've got that 3-year contract and 2 years more to run on it, but do you fancy just signing maybe just a 1-year extension and maybe putting in a clause saying if you want to buy it, it's going to cost, I don't know, £200 billion or whatever. I sound like Dr. Evil there, don't I? But I think potentially could have been sat down a little bit sooner. But again, I don't know how early they sat down and chatted with her. But it's, I think a few people online have said it's a bit worrying, take out Ona and Alessia. There's other players as well that we don't necessarily know where they're at. I asked Mark about Vilda last week, and he didn't seem very happy with the question being asked. He said it's the last time that I want to answer the question about Vilda's future. But I think, Vilda's future, up until I asked the question, it wasn't confirmed whether there's been any extension put on that. Then you've got Hayley Ladd on top of that. You've got Mary Earps. So if you're talking about future-proof, if all these contracts fall to pieces and you're in the middle of a takeover, how many players are you going to be without? I'm sure that won't be the case, but you have to plan for worst-case scenario if you're going to be saying you're a future-proof sort of club. For me, if I was a fan of Manchester United, I would have liked these, one way or another, to be sorted a little bit earlier in advance. But again, I'm not in the room. I'm not the one negotiating, and I'm no good with money anyway. So probably not the best person to be dealing with contract negotiations, Conor, to be honest.
No, it's certainly a tough one. There was a comment a bit further up saying that, whoever, I think it was in reference to me and Matt saying what we've heard from certain sides, the issue, there it is. The issue involves such deals, people release information. I don't doubt that. 100%. I've always said when you hear things from players' agents, it's going to be in favour of the player. If you hear things from the club, it's going to be in favour of the club. The truth is somewhere in the middle most of the time, which is why what we're saying on here, we have had this collaborated. Is all I will say on that one. Matt, I'll come to you on a question. I can see there is a question about Jade. I'll quickly come to that before we move to Russo, actually. Matt, from a United point of view, we've just kind of not laid into them a little bit. We've just kind of said our piece on what we think they've done wrong. Do you think it's maybe a positive thing that we have already signed Jade Riviere, obviously, from Canada, and that looks to be there was a couple of conversations a bit further up saying about who would replace Ona. For me, I think we already have. I think when Jade was signed, that was the replacement, and that was United pretty much admitting that she's going. What do you think on that one? And do you think it's I'm not going to say a risk, but the fact that it's another, I guess, young player that's going to come in and will probably start most games unless we're going to buy a replacement?
Yeah, I think the signing of her in January for me was interesting. I think that was sort of not admitting the owner's going, but sort of in the background, like, actually we're getting nowhere with negotiations, or they've not negotiated at all. I think that's sort of, for me, set in stone that actually, well, why would you need another right back that's actually a very good young player when you've got probably the best right back in the world at the club? So I think in terms of that, we have a replacement. We're not scrambling about last minute like we have been in the past. In terms of next season, obviously she's been coming back, or she was coming back from an injury when she came in. She's had a substitute appearance so far. It's difficult, isn't it? Obviously, we're fighting for sort of titles and trophies and finals and things like that. So she's not been able to get the minutes. Again, like I said to you before, can she build on it in pre-season? Who knows? I just think when you're coming from another country, a different league, it always takes players time to settle in. Some settle in more than others, very quick. Some take 12 months plus. It just varies. But I'd like to think that, if Jade's fitness is up to scratch and she works hard pre-season, there's no reason for me why she can't come in and, keep that right back spot. I think she's, from what I've seen, a very good player. And it's going to be interesting. I think, another young player, again, we talked about sort of bringing in youth and a bit of experience as well and sort of safeguarding the club. I think this sort of does that. I just don't like, similar to what we've mentioned, the dragging on, it seems, of negotiations. Like, it is a worry that there's so many players. We talked about Mary and Hayley Ladd, and we've left it last minute, and it feels like a bit of a scramble now. Now, listen, we don't know fully what goes on behind the scenes, but I just feel like, we would have heard by now, previous seasons maybe, when people have signed things. They've announced them early. Obviously, we knew the Tooney deal early. I think it was Millie Turner, the latest one as well, things like that. So it's a concern it's dragging on, but I think in terms of a replacement, it's good that somebody's already in the building and is, will be 6-7 months into her United career come the summer.
Yeah, no, certainly good on that front. I think I sent somebody a message earlier saying by the end of next season, we could potentially have, I think it's like 15 out of contract without an option if they're not agreed by that point. That is just mental to me.
Ridiculous.
The fact that we could get, you'd like to think that we'll have a few over the summer that have either gone or have re-signed by the time we start next season. Moving on to kind of the second player on the thumbnail, because I'm conscious we're already 23 minutes in and we've not even spoke about it too much yet. Graham, I'm going to come to you first because you put out some information yesterday off the back of this. It was like information overload on from Man United yesterday. But Alessia Russo, where do you think we're up to with that then? Because obviously, if we pretty much know that Ona's going, the next name on everyone's kind of thoughts is Alessia Russo, and can we keep hold of her? It's looking like it's going to be a 4-year deal, as reported by yourself and a couple of other people now. Are you expecting her to stay now? What do we think on that one? Because again, as Matt says, another one that seems to, I know for it, I will stick my neck out for a fact that talks have been going on for 18 months. That is very true. So we're still here and nothing seems to be too agreed yet. But where are you kind of at with that one, do you think?
Well, Alessia's an asset, isn't she? Because I've said this before, I think she will become the best striker in the world. I know not everyone agrees with me on that, but I think she's got all the qualities to be able to do so. I think she's getting more clinical as well this season. So it's no surprise that, you hear other clubs are sniffing around her if she's available on a free transfer. I mean, there was a club that made a £500,000 bid in January when she had 6 months left to go on it, which shows you the value that other clubs see her at. What I would say is that a lot of the stuff that does come out, it's frustrating because I think yesterday I mentioned to someone who said that it was just stuff that was being made up. As journalists, as people, we also have careers. So we don't put something out without hearing a fair amount of people with good sources sort of letting us know that information. I actually said yesterday, to my understanding, it was a length of contract that was the big holdup. And it was mentioned by a few different people that it was around the 6-year contract. And I understand that it's currently at 4. I don't know if that's a 3 plus a 1 like extension. because obviously Man United do a lot of deals with extensions in it, whether it's a straight for. I'm not at that table. I can't say what I know what it is, but it seems a lot of very good journalists. I think Rich Laverty mentioned yesterday. I think everyone knows his record and how good of a journalist he is. Mentioned that was the deal, and also that there was interest from the NWSL, which I have also been made aware of previously. I think other journalists have as well. But what I would say is that, and again, I'm not in the room with Alessia seeing if she signed this contract or not, and I don't think anyone is. And if I am, I'll let you know straight away. I promise. I'll take photos. I'll send it to you. But when a lot of very good, prominent journalists and people around the club start to appear quite confident that a deal could be agreed with Alessia, or she's more likely to stay, which was mentioned on a show by Tom Gowrie the other day. And again, another superb journalist, another person who is not going to say something unless he's pretty confident in something. To my knowledge, there's a reason he's held in such high esteem. If a lot of people are starting to think that, and then, previously you've heard that the sticking point might have been the length of contract, it wouldn't be that surprising if there's been some sort of negotiation between them both, if they have been negotiating for 18 months, where they're both quite happy with what the situation is. I think I said on the show when I came on in December, January, I think for any player at Manchester United, a contract of that level, Alessia / Ona, Champions League football is a must. That one's tick. You've got it. It's sound. No problem at all. So Manchester United are on a big, big leap in their progress. That's a big, big leap. That creates money. It creates the elite competition that you're going to be in, and you're going to finish second. I'm fairly confident of that. And that obviously means that, you've become the second best team. You've hit a cup final. You've been beaten by your Chelsea team. Chelsea is the one that have nudged you out. Chelsea are really, really good at football. I don't know if anyone's noticed. And their side is brilliant as well. But I do think that with Russo, I think there's far too many good, prominent journalists, far too many whispers that are now seemingly a bit more confident that Russo will sign the deal. To me, that means there must be something in the water that it's fairly close, or it's on the verge of being. And I'm assuming that means there's been negotiation, or there's been some collaboration, if you prefer, on either length of contract or pay to get to a place where they both want to stay at Manchester United and they want the club to stay there as well. Again, I'm not in the room. I don't know. Anything can change. That is football. And that is kind of the sticky thing. Football can change in a day. But from what it seems, from what other people have posted, it looks like a good maybe 4-year contract made up by either 3 + 1 or 4-year contract. And I would assume Alessia would potentially be a little bit more happy with that than anything that would have been longer. And the club seem to be happy to commit to that length of time. Do I think it's the right move for Alessia to stay at this moment? Yes, I do. Leon's a big pull, and Leon have been interested. The NWSL is a really good league. I don't know if necessarily that would be the right move for her at the moment. For me, she's progressing quite nicely at Manchester United. She's the main striker. She's getting better. She's getting more clinical. She's loved by the fans. She's loved by England fans as well. So her reputation over in England and for a club and international is doing really, really well. And I think she's at maybe the right stage in her career where Manchester United is the right place to be at the moment. So I personally hope so. But anything can change in a day. But it does seem that a lot of people are confident. And when a lot of prominent people who are very good journalists and whatnot seem confident, you would assume that something's on the verge of hopefully being signed for Manchester United.
Yeah, I mean, Matt, I'll throw the same question over to yourself. But also, I wanted to ask, I think you answered this actually on a fans forum with Barry. It might have been the one when I joined from my car, actually, and I was kind of half listening while I was outside LSV. But I'm going to ask you, obviously, the follow-up question, obviously talking about Russo's contract, but also, do you think she can reach that elite level status? Me and Graham have this debate a lot, whether she can reach that. You've watched it. The reason why I asked you this is because you've watched her, from years and years back, watched her pretty much progress through her whole career. Do you think she can get to that level? Obviously, we're talking about a player here who's likely, no, I won't say that. We're talking about her contract and so on.
Yeah.
Do you think she can get to that level? We're hearing some of the numbers that Sam Kerr potentially is being offered at Chelsea. Obviously, United, I stick my neck and say nowhere near that that level of dealings, but. Can she get to that level? And I guess what do you kind of expect on her contract future with the news that's come out recently?
I'll start with, can she get to that level? For me, yes. I think from what I've seen as it was under 17 World Cup out in Jordan. I think as a kid to now, talking last 6-7 years, I think she has progressed massively. I think her game overall, there's a lot of people, I keep seeing this judging her, oh yeah, well, she's only scored 10 goals, she's only scored 12 goals. And granted, that is a job, but if you watch her play, and I think it's easier if you're not a United fan, watch her overall game. And I think this was the big thing I learned, and I was so excited she came in. If you watch those runs from deep and the way she battles and holds up for that ball and gets around that pitch, you know, she's very good at what she does. The thing that's lacking for me is potentially one, the service, and two, a strike partner. I think, you know, with another number 9 next to her, which will mean a change in formation or style of play, 100%. I think for me, you know, there's still room to develop. Costa, she's still young, but I think, you know, in terms of can she get there, for me, 100%. You know, we've seen, obviously, the first season she came, she got a bit of an injury. You know, she's come back from that. She had a strong season this season, maybe gone under the radar, but I think, you know, we've got to bear in mind, and I talked about this actually with Rob the other day, sort of player fatigue. Rob was telling me, and he was like, oh, you know, have you noticed there was a lot of the Lionesses not hit the heights of last season? But again, you know, separate conversation completely. But I'm just thinking, we look at it and, you know, there's constant people bashing Tooney weekly, oh, yeah, she's only done 3 goals or something this year and 8 assists, you know. But I just think these players aren't machines. And these players, you know, that we're talking about, like Russo, Tooney, they're still very young. So for me, you know, we really do need to sign her up, you know, marketable or not, just on footballing reasons. I think, you know, we've seen what she can do. She can pick a ball up deep. She's good in the air. She's strong. She can hit a ball from range. My worry is if she goes and we don't sort out the contract situation, who we're getting in that's, one, going to be within budget, and 2, going to be as good. I can't think off the top of my head a realistic signing without it getting into sort of silly season on transfers and people saying, oh, I want Hagerberg and I want this player and I want that player. Contract situation, I've heard similar to you. I think I said to you before, Conrad into 4 years was what I was led to believe. Obviously, again, could be true, could be not. I've also heard she will be the highest paid player at the club, or that's certainly the offer out there anyway. So, you know, again, we're talking about value, or I was before, in terms of your playing staff. And I think you look at what Russo's been rumoured to be offered, and then you hear about what Ona's been offered, and it feels like 2 completely different worlds. You know, I think it feels insulting to Ona and an acceptable offer for Russo. And I think one thing we've not mentioned as well, Russo's obviously a United fan. Now, whether that has any pull at all, but I think, you know, the reason she signed, if anyone goes back and listens to the interview, you know, she was basically home. You know, United fan as a kid, whole family of Reds, loves the club, you know, so it's about time that we, you know, again, just sort it out. You know, it's faffing about again, isn't it? People talking about 6-year deals. Now, if that was the case, would you stay on a 6-year deal on the same wage? Absolutely not. You wouldn't, would you? If she's going to be one of the best players in, let's say, Europe in the next 4 or 5 years, when she hits that peak of sort of 27, 28, are you going to want to stay on the same wage? No, you're not. And again, I'll link it back. If you're in a line of work, let's say you work at Tesco or something, you know, start off in the tills, you want to move up to manager, you're not just going to sit on your till checkout wage. When, do you know what I mean? When you're a manager, that's as realistic as I can get it without sort of, you know, missing the point. But I just feel like, you know, offer a sensible contract. I get, you know, 6 years, you want to tie your player down, but I think 3 with an option is respectable enough, and then review it from there on in. And, you know, let's build a team around her. We've got a good core of players now. It's about time we kick on and sort it out.
No, for sure. I just want to say welcome to Kaz, who's just on the chat. There's a rumour floating around, Kaz, that you're signing for United. A 2-year deal, I hear. So, you know, confirm or deny, if you will, in the chat. Welcome to Grace. I'm not seeing you in the chat before, so I hope you're enjoying. I really hope Ona doesn't go. I would probably prepare yourself that she is. It'll make it a lot easier, is all I'll say on that one. There was a comment a bit further up. It was kind of a question. I wasn't going to go down this route, but considering TJ put the question in, talking about Lyon's current situation, obviously that is the club that Russo is linked to, or heavily linked to. Obviously the 2 London clubs as well, in Arsenal and Chelsea. Does anyone think, I don't know who wants to jump on that one. We know there's some issue there. There's a couple of players leaving. Hegerberg actually linked to Barcelona. Loose links, I will say that, though. I don't think there's too much concrete in that just yet. But could that affect things? Could that be maybe one of the reasons that Russo has come back to the table, so to speak? Or how are we kind of looking at Lyon? Because we're talking about one of the best clubs in Europe here, you know, in Lyon. You know, won the Champions League however many times and so on. But what are we saying on that question there? I don't know who wants to jump on. I can see Graham shaping up.
Is it because I do that? I think, yeah, but I think also you look at, like, I know there could be players that are like leaving Lyon and stuff like that, but they've got some pretty solid centre forwards. So, like, how far do they need to push for like an extra one? And I think, especially in sort of January, when you've seen Arsenal, for me, £500,000 at the time felt quite desperate because they desperately needed a centre forward because they only had Blackstenius. I don't know whether Lyon necessarily need to be that desperate if they can keep their powder dry and stuff like that. I don't really know. I still think Lyon would have as big a pull as they ever have because of the size of club they are in women's football. But we talked about tugging on heartstrings before, like, you know, like Matt said, you've got Alessia as a Man United fan there since birth, and I know football is like a professional thing, and it's hard for us as fans to think of anything different. Like, my dream, like I still can't get my head around. I mentioned him last time on the show, so I've got to forgive this. But I can't get my head around why Jordan Henderson wanted to play for Liverpool, not Sunderland, for the rest of his life, because I'm a Sunderland fan, but there's obvious reasons for why he left Sunderland to go to Liverpool. So you could say, is Alessia looking at the likes of Lyon or whatnot and thinking, can I progress faster there and win things faster there? Which is 24. But the performance of Manchester United this season and how close they've got, does she maybe think herself, you know, this is a club I support. It's a good deal. I'll be the highest paid player. You know, we've come within a whisker of winning 2 trophies this year. Is the progression of Manchester United actually further on than I thought it was in January? Because I think it is. I didn't think you would have had a good a season. And I know there's been no trophies there. Potentially might not be, unless Redden do an absolute madness on Saturday. But, like, I don't think they're too far away. I really don't. Like, I think there's a trophy virgin on the horizon somewhere. If it wasn't for Chelsea, which is a silly thing to say, I suppose, because there is a Chelsea, I think you'd be quite clear the best side in England this year. I think there's only Chelsea who are like a juggernaut, isn't it, that have stopped you, really?
No, I'd agree with that. What Sarah's put there is exactly one of the reasons why I'm a little bit frustrated. You know, I think the transfer room is taken away from the brilliant season. You know, we should be sat here right now talking about the Liverpool game and the fact we're going into it as, you know, it's not going to happen. You'll hear at the end, but
you're such a successful club, Connor. I don't mean to inject. You're such a successful club. Like, I mean, I was born in '86, so I've grown up with Manchester United being like the powerhouse of everything. You're such a successful club that, whether you like it or not, I agree with what Sarah says 100%. You've had a great season in context, but when did football ever do context? Like, Manchester United want to win things yesterday, and I get that. Like, for me, you know, outside my women's team's Glasgow City, my men's team is Sunderland, I've got expectations of both of those clubs. When it comes to Manchester United, I look at you and I think, well, 5 years of club, FA Cup final, getting the Champions League, you've got like Ona, Alessia, like, they're building, they look really good. Like, that's going to be massive in a couple of years' time. If you're a Man United fan, you're thinking, well, I don't want to wait 3 years to see if it's going to be good. I want the good now because I'm used to it. And you know how successful a club can be. And Manchester United, whether they've been a club for 5 months, 5 years, or 500 years, set a standard just in the name itself. So I agree 100% with what Sarah says. It has taken away from how good of a season it is. But the staple of Manchester United is trophies, and you haven't got any this year. So I understand why the fan base feels it's not as successful as it could be.
Potentially, I think. Yeah, I mean, yeah, well, I'm not going to add on off the back of anything. I want to spend a very brief minute talking about something else in just a second. Kaz has confirmed it. Leslie's number 9 partner. We're going to go 4-4-2. Kaz and Russo up front, wearing the number 90. I don't know if anyone's gone that high before. I don't even think I've never seen anyone with a player that high, but there we are. Matt, name in the comments. Esme Brugts. We wanted to spend five minutes at tops on this one, but because it is a rumor at this stage. I guess the angle for this question is it's another young player, another young prospect, if you want to call it that. Obviously, we've already signed Rabjon. It looks like, as Graham mentioned earlier, the links to Emma Watson as well. Some of the other players that are kind of rumoured to be linked to seem to be pretty young as well. Is that, I don't know, is that like a worry, or are you excited by the fact that we've got a profile player that we're going for? I'm not saying this is a done deal, by the way. It's far from that. It's a link at this point. It's a player we're interested in. Let me just throw that out there before anyone jumps in. But yeah, Matt, what do you think on that link in particular? I don't know if you know the player too well, or if you've watched her at all, or what you think on the fact of that seems to be our profile we're going for.
Yeah, I mean, I've only briefly seen bits, obviously, for the national team for Holland. Obviously, she's still very young. I think she's 18, 19 years old, something like that. Got quite a few caps for Holland. I think it's an exciting player. It's an interesting link. Obviously, I don't think there's many times where we look at, say, the Dutch market. I think I've always, as you know, Connor, I've always been a fan of, looking sort of places like Germany. I know people favour Spain and France, but I think I like that, there is a young, exciting profile that we're sort of looking to add to what we have. Again, it's difficult because for me, it's great looking at young players, but are they going to necessarily fit in straight away? I had a conversation with somebody after the game last week, and we sort of, we were chatting, we saw Grace Clinton, and we sort of said, well, what next for her? We've, loaned her out, which is fine. Does she come in and challenge next season? Probably not. So where does that leave her? Potentially another loan. It's happened in the past where there's been players with potential come in. Whether they were good enough, who knows? But thinking, ones that let go, and it was a big conversation when Amy Palmer left. Was that the right decision at the time? Maybe, maybe not. We'll never know. But I think if we can get that balance right of sort of exciting potential, even somebody that can come in straight away, Ona slotted in straight away, then why not? I would love to see, somebody like that happen. Like you said, whether it does, obviously it's just a rumour. But again, I'm a big fan of competition for places. I think had conversations this season as well. Have we got any competition on the left for Leah? I know Garcia's been used both sides this season. Paris has been swapped about a bit, even Tooney. He's not a wide player before anybody comes and jumps in my comments. But I just think, competition for places is always a plus. If we want to go far again next season in terms of the league, in terms of trophies, in terms of Champions League, again, we're going to need the squad. We're going to have to be able to rotate. And, I hate using Chelsea as an example, but at the minute, Emma Hayes has a very good balance and has done for the past few years of, rotating your team, still get them playing, to her standards, still competing for more or less every trophy every year. And it shows. So I think, if we can get a signing like that, obviously there was a couple you mentioned earlier in the show as well, youngsters coming in, then I don't see why not. My worry is that we do a Chelsea and we hoard them, and then kind of, we don't see anything of them and they disappear. But listen, let's sort of run in before we can walk that. But let's see what summer brings. I'm interested to see who comes in. I do think a wide player for me and a forward or two as well would be wonderful. And obviously that depends as well on who goes out as well, in terms of, certain number of players in a certain position will need to be replaced. And let's see where we go.
Certainly going to be an interesting time. We're going to have a few shows on that coming up about potential outgoings as well, so I don't want to cover that too much. But you mentioned a really good... There's obviously a lot of chat about Overdorf at the moment in the comments. It is criminal, by the way, the fact we're not looking at the German market more, because there is some fantastic players in that league. I called
this like 12, 18 months ago. It's before the Euros.
Maybe we'll do another show on that, Matt. Me, you and Alina will jump on and just talk about some players that we want from Germany, because not even just from the top two clubs, from the likes of Frankfurt and Hoffenheim, there's some brilliant players there that are just not being picked up on. I know Arsenal have just signed a player, I think, from Frankfurt, but, United just don't... It's not just women's team. The men's side, I don't remember, apart from Schweinsteiger aside, and obviously Sabitzer at the moment, we don't tend to go to Germany for players, which is a bit strange. Graham, very quickly, your thoughts on this Esme Brugts, and we're just kind of wrap up the last kind of 5 minutes talking a little bit about Saturday, but what do you think on that potential link there?
Yeah, there's interest. Yeah, there's definitely interest there. I think it makes sense. Like, she is going to be available on a free transfer. She's ready to make the next step. She's 19, so you've got years to work with her. She's already got 16 caps, 4 goals, already played a big tournament. Obviously, like, Rabjohn's going to be a good signing for the future, but like when you compare and contrast the 17-year-old, or I think 18 now, Evie Rabjohn with 19-year-old Esme, the difference in where they are in their progression is quite big. And I'm not saying that Evie can't go above it, and yada yada, different positions and so on and so forth. But Esme has obviously done a lot and still is only 19 years old, so there's obviously going to be interest there. But how many clubs are interested in Ona and Alessia who are at that level of progression? So there's going to be other clubs there as well. I believe Manchester City are also interested. There's the caveat of Champions League football and stuff like that goes with it, so you don't know. But I'm pretty certain, and I couldn't name them for you fully. Actually, well, I probably could, but I won't. There's going to be other clubs interested in her as well. She's going to be someone that a lot of clubs look at, and then it becomes Manchester United's job and Mark Skinner's job, or whoever sits around the table to make that convincing argument that Manchester United are the right place to be, that they convince her it is the right place to be, and she does sign the contract. I would be fairly confident, though, if I was a Manchester United fan. It's an attractive club to be at. It's had the best season they've ever had. They've been in a cup final. They've got some of the biggest names in world football. They've got a massive way to market yourself as well. Like, if you're looking at it from a player perspective, I know your priority would be 100% playing first and foremost as fans, and I think the player would be that as well. But Manchester United is also a massive place to make your name. If you do well for Manchester United, you are well remembered for a long, long time. We've seen that with the men's team. We're starting to see that with the women's team as well. I think when Ona goes, I've been reading through some of the comments, and a lot of people are saying, like, if she goes, gutted, but she's done her best for us. She's had a great season, and I'm sure in time, when the kind of pain and the rawness subsides, she'll be remembered. And I think players look at that as well and think, can I come and make an impact? Can I make the fans happy? Can I make a mark on women's football? And I don't see why, anyone wouldn't see Manchester United as that. So I think they've got as good a chance as anyone. I think it's a good player. I think 19 years old. I think Matt touched on it before. There's not much option to play anyone other than Leah. I think it'll be difficult to get in ahead of Leah based on the season she's had, but competition's healthy. And competition is something that hasn't happened as much as some fans would like this season. I think when you've got the likes of, Esme, I think she's definitely going to give Leah some competition as well. But I think the midfield's an interesting one as well. We were talking about it the other day, Connor. How many midfielders are there? And is he going to make more? Is he going to bring more players in that central midfield position? Because at the minute you've got Zellum, you've got Hayley Ladd, and you've got Ella Toon just in front. You've got Vilda Borisa, who I personally think, from what I've watched this season, which has not been enough. I think when she's been in, I think she's good enough to make that team, if I'm honest with you. But then there's going to be people wanting more world-class players or more elite players in those positions across the park, and that includes midfield. Who do you bring in at that point? Do you keep the same midfield you've got and bring in extra competition? Does that then upset Vilda Borisa even more? Because she's obviously not happy with only starting 2 games. So there's a lot of things to juggle there. But ultimately, you're going to need a bigger squad because it's going to be your biggest season in terms of your next level of progression and your most amount of games played. If you want to win a cup, if you want to win the league, if you want to do one in the Champions League, that's more fixtures than Man United ever played before, and a lot of those players have played before. So you're going to need to rotate.
Midfield, I don't even want to get into that conversation because there's so many. As you said there, Matt mentioned stockpiling. I mean, geez, we literally are stockpiling. I mean, Lisa's another one. Kansas obviously a Vilda fan page. I mean, there's just so many that we could talk about in midfield. I want to spend the last kind of, because I'm conscious obviously the men's team kick off in 8 minutes time. Want to talk obviously a little bit about Saturday because we're not going to do another show before then. There will be another type of show on Saturday though, so keep your eyes peeled for that one. Matt, is there any possibility United could do something? Well, I say United could do so, it's not in our hands. But is there any possibility where we walk away on Saturday as champions, or do you think let's just go there and enjoy the game? How are you kind of feeling going into it? Because I don't know about you, I fully convinced myself that Reading are going to do something, and I need to stop because I'm going to be severely disappointed when Chelsea put 6 past them by half time. So, how are you kind of feeling going into that one?
I was in 2 minds. I started off, I think, in our group chat with silly season, and I said something like, we're going to beat Liverpool 7-0 and Reading are going to draw 2-2 with Chelsea. Now, if that happens, you can hand me predictions league if you like. I'll just be the winner based on that. But no, I think, listen, it's going to be difficult, isn't it, for Reading? Yes, they're at home. Yes, they're fighting for their lives. But I just think the table doesn't lie, and your season and your results don't lie. And listen, they've been poor all season, it's safe to say. I just can't see them getting anything out of the game at all. I think I'm even struggling with predictions. Do I go 5-0? Do I go 6-0? I know that sounds disrespectful, but I can just see it. We've seen what Chelsea do to teams. It's going to be difficult. I think, listen, we go to Liverpool as fans knowing that Champions League is secured. We know we're in with a very slim chance of winning the league. For me, it's just enjoy it. There's nothing better than, obviously, a derby against Liverpool, obviously Man City as well, if we're talking sort of closer geographical-wise. But you can't beat United-Liverpool game. I believe it's pretty much a sellout in terms of the second away end, if that's what we want to call it. So plenty of travelling people. I think, let's get the 3 points. Let's hammer Liverpool, see where we end up. And, if we win the league, it's going to be one hell of a party. And if we don't, we've pushed Chelsea to the final game. I think you were talking about achievements before. It's progression. Whether people agree or disagree, that's fine. But I think for me, I certainly think there's been progression this year. We've pushed them all the way. We've got Champions League. We've got to a cup final. Granted, we lost, but it's better than what we've had of the last couple of years. We've been fighting for fourth and just missing out. Defensive record looks better. Attacking wise, a bit better, although for me can be improved. So, yeah, let's just go and see what we can do to Liverpool and see where we end up. But I'm fully expecting Chelsea to dismantle Reading, sadly.
Yep, Graham, very quickly for yourself. Is there any hope for United fan Deanne Rose being back? She is back, isn't she? I've not just made that up. I'm pretty sure she came back on in the second half against Spurs, unless I've completely made that up and I'm just going mental. But, I mean, Reading do need a win, I'm pretty sure, to stay up. Is there any possibility, or do you just think Chelsea are going to do a number on them and it's going to be 6 or 7 by half time?
It'd be surprised, look, how good Chelsea are. But I mean, as I stated before, I'm a Glasgow City fan, and I hope everyone watched the Scottish Premier League title race on Sunday, which had a glorious, glorious end. And there was all these sort of connotations by how Celtic could win the league, Rangers could win the league if these goals went in, that goals went in, and if Glasgow City did X, Y, or Z. And ultimately, my mindset as a fan was always, if you win your game, you win the league. It's fine. You've done everything that you can do. And that's all that matters. And Celtic fans might have felt the same way. Rangers fans might have felt the same way. For me, for Manchester United, forget about Chelsea. Win your game. Do that. I'll give you another example. Just to give Man United fans a little bit of hope. I'm also obviously a Sunderland fan. Now, obviously, sadly, the playoffs didn't happen. But I know you lot have been keeping an eye on Amad Diallo. Now, we went down to Preston on the final day of the season. We had to win and hope that Millwall didn't. They were playing Blackburn at home. We were 0-0 at half-time. We saw that Millwall were 3-1 up against Blackburn. That was game over. It was done. And we said, second half, just go on, put a good performance in, make us feel a bit positive about next season, do what you need to do, and the rest is out of your hands. You cannot control it. Lo and behold, Blackburn scored 3 second-half goals, beat them 4-3, and we got into the playoffs, and it was one of the best days of my life. Sadly, the playoffs didn't really work out after that. But win your game. That's all that matters. Forget about Chelsea. It doesn't matter what they do. If you beat Liverpool, the worst case scenario is you finish the season with only 2 defeats in the league and 2 draws. You finish second. You've got Champions League football. You've had a great day beating your rivals on their own patch, and you go on and go forward. And if Reading do something, spotty dog, you get a trophy at the end of it.
It would be quite something. I said I probably wouldn't be leaving Liverpool if we do end up winning something on Saturday. That is for sure. Right, I'll come to you for your score predictions then before we wrap this one up. Matt, I'll get you. In fact, I'm going to ask you for both games, Chelsea and United. I'm conscious, obviously, Matt, you're in the predictions league, so this might change by the time you input those to myself or Barry. But what do you reckon for Saturday?
I've been on the comeback with that predictions league. I've been doing all right last few weeks. I'm going to say 5-0 Chelsea and 4-0 Man United.
I think that's about where I'm thinking, Graham, for yourself.
1-0 Man United and 3-1 Chelsea.
Closer then. A lot closer. Then maybe. To be fair, Liverpool have been really good in recent weeks. Obviously, they draw to Villa, Chelsea, City. They beat them as well.
Liverpool's been all right this season. I've seen them a few times. They beat Chelsea. They're absolutely no mugs at home whatsoever. Reading have to give everything that they can. I don't think they've got the strength to get past Chelsea, but I know everyone thinks Chelsea might be a 6-7-0. They've got the quality to do that, but Reading are going to be fighting for their lives. If they're going to put in a performance that's at least full of effort, that might keep the score down a little bit. And fingers crossed for United fans, they'll just accidentally win 1-0.
Honest, if Reading go up in that game, and obviously news gets round to us in the ground, I said I'm not going to be. I'd just make sure nobody stood near me.
Just have every summer holiday in Reading instead, just for the rest of your life. We're going to Reading again this July. Yeah,
maybe if we do win the league, maybe we'll do an AFU show outside Reading's ground. If Reading pulls something off, maybe we'll do that or something like that.
Just buying them flowers and chocolates and thank you cards and.
honestly. And yeah, Sport, you make a good point. The 6-0 was after the win, and I think Liverpool have changed a bit since then as well.
It wasn't a 6-0 game. Mark Skinner said that this morning. It wasn't. It'll be a lot tighter game. Liverpool are a decent side.
Yeah, and obviously, if Reading do get a draw, we need to win. 4 goals behind Chelsea or 5 or something like that. I think we need another 6-0 to be able to do it if Reading get a draw anyway. So who knows on that one. Right, we should wrap it up there. I've just said the numbers jump up as we're about to wrap this one up. So if you are just joining us, make sure you go and rewatch this. We spoke about Ona and Russo at the start and a little bit about Liverpool at the end. Make sure you follow our Twitter account and check out our pinned tweet. We are going to be doing a show in a couple of weeks' time with our kind of season awards, if you want to call them that. So make sure everyone's got 2 votes. Player of the season, goal of the season. Go and drop it on there. I've seen some people replying with 3 and 4 and 5 names. Don't do that. Like, well, I'm just going to take your first 2 names. Everyone's got 2 votes, so go and put your nominations on there. And like I said, in a couple of weeks' time, we'll be doing that. I said Barry will be back on Saturday with a different type of show, so keep an eye out for that. If we win the league, we are going live Saturday, Sunday, and Monday night. I'm saying that now. So make sure you hop on board for that. If we don't, we'll be back on next Monday just for a normal match reaction. And transfer season's upon us. So make sure you're following Graham, because I'm sure he'll be breaking stuff left, right, and centre as we head into transfer season. I may have just dropped him in there and he might not be. But
I've had enough. When I post things that I know people shout at me, when I don't post things that I know people shout at me, stop shouting at me. Just stop it. I deserve a peaceful life.
Definitely. So yeah, make sure you're following Graham for that. Obviously following Matt as well, for the work over at FC United as well, as they headed to, you started pre-season earlier, didn't you? I think.
Very early. I've only had 4 weeks off. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but hey ho, yeah, back in 2 weeks.
There we go. So make sure you go and follow Matt as well. Make sure you're liking the video, subscribing, and we shall see you guys in the next one.